In the final months of World War II, Allied intelligence recovered fragments of a classified Nazi file from a remote facility near the Polish border. Most of the documents had been burned before the site was abandoned, but the surviving pages all referred to the same experiment. Projekt Sleepwalker. Projekt Sleepwalker. Officially, it was a study into trauma, sleep deprivation, and altered consciousness. Unofficially, the prisoners who survived called it something else. They called it the place where dreams learned to watch back. The facility was listed as Arbeitslager 17B, a minor labor camp with no strategic value. On paper, it was nothing unusual. Barracks, a medical wing, storage buildings, and a concrete bunker beneath the central compound. But aerial reconnaissance photographs showed something strange. The camp had been built in a perfect circle. The barracks radiated outward from the bunker like spokes on a wheel. The guarded towers stood at equal intervals. Even the outer fences followed the same circular pattern. No ordinary labor camp needed that design, and no ordinary labor camp needed a buried chamber lined with iron, copper wiring, and sealed sensory deprivation tanks. The prisoners selected for Projekt Sleepwalker were unusual too. They were not chosen for labor, age, politics, or military value. According to the surviving files, every subject had survived a near-death experience. Some had drowned and been revived. Some had survived failed executions. Others had been declared dead during surgery before waking again. The Nazis believed these people had crossed a threshold and returned. Dr. Ernst Vogler believed that threshold could be opened again. Before the war, Vogler had been a psychiatrist obsessed with dreams, mythology, and the collective unconscious. He believed dreams were not simply images created by the sleeping brain. He believed dreams were a shared space, a hidden layer beneath human thought. He called it the Untertraum, the underdream. In one note, he described it as the black ocean beneath consciousness, where all human fear has its root. His colleagues considered him unstable. His methods were rejected as unethical. But under the SS Medical Corps, Vogler found funding, protection, and prisoners who could not refuse. Vogler believed trauma, starvation, isolation, and sleep deprivation could weaken the boundary between the waking mind and the underdream. But he was most interested in near-death survivors. He believed death left a fracture in the mind, a doorway. Projekt Sleepwalker was created to find that doorway and force it open. The experiments began with sleep deprivation. Prisoners were kept awake for days under constant light. They were questioned repeatedly and shown symbols, ink blots, photographs, and geometric patterns until they began to hallucinate. Then came the tanks. Subjects were sealed inside iron containers filled with lukewarm water. The tanks blocked sound and light. Each prisoner floated alone in darkness, breathing through a narrow tube. Some were left inside for hours, others for days. When they were removed, weak and trembling, Vogler's assistants recorded everything they remembered. At first, the reports were ordinary. Fear, voices, childhood memories, dead relatives. But soon, prisoners from different countries, speaking different languages, began describing the same images. A black doorway in a field of ash, a staircase descending into dark water, a child's hand pressed against glass, a woman with hair like roots, and a tall man with no face, waiting at the edge of a forest. Vogler became obsessed. He believed the prisoners were not hallucinating randomly. They were seeing the same place, the Underdream. The faceless man appeared in more and more reports. One prisoner said he heard breathing inside the tank that was not his own. Another said he felt someone standing over him, even though the lid was sealed. A third said the man had no face because faces are for the living. At first, Vogler called the figure an archetype, a shared projection created by extreme stress. Then the prisoners began returning with information they could not have known. One described the layout of Vogler's locked office, though he had never entered it. Another repeated a conversation between two guards that had happened while he was sealed inside the tank. When questioned, both prisoners gave the same answer. The visitors showed us. After that, Vogler stopped calling the figures hallucinations. In one surviving entry, he wrote, "They are not memories. They are not dreams. They observe us from a distance that cannot be measured. Their intelligence is present, but their sympathy is absent." By January 1945, Vogler began entering the tanks himself. After one session, he ordered every mirror removed from his quarters. After another, witnesses said he kept turning his head as if someone were standing behind him, but no one was there. Soon, Vogler stopped sleeping. He wandered the bunker at night, barefoot, whispering into empty tanks. He told his assistants the visitors were not trying to enter the world. They were already here, only asleep. His final complete note before the last experiment read, "They do not need a door. They need an awakening." On February 14, 1945, Vogler began the final stage of Projekt Sleepwalker. He selected 30 prisoners. Each had survived a near-death experience. Each had reacted strongly to the tank sessions. Each had reported seeing the faceless man. The 30 subjects were sealed inside tanks arranged around the central chamber. Copper wiring connected them in a ring. Vogler called it a resonance array. He believed 30 damaged minds forced into the same altered state could dream together. The experiment was meant to last 72 hours. It lasted 12. At 2:13 in the morning, guards outside the bunker reported a low humming from underground. Not screams, not machinery, a hum, deep, steady, almost musical. One guard said it felt as though the concrete itself had begun to breathe. Another claimed there were voices inside the sound, speaking in a language he did not understand. Several guards abandoned their posts before dawn. One shot himself. When Vogler's assistants entered the bunker the next morning, the lights were flickering. The air was wet and cold. All 30 tanks were still sealed. But the prisoners were gone. There was no water on the floor, no broken locks, no damaged hinges, no tunnel, no hidden exit. The tanks had been locked from the outside, and the subjects had vanished from within them. Only a fine gray residue remained at the bottom of each tank. The walls of the chamber were covered in writing. The same phrase repeated in German, Polish, Russian, Latin, in languages no one present could identify. Wir sind erwacht. We are awake. Vogler was missing too. His coat was found over his chair. His boots were beside his bed. His glasses lay on his desk. His journal was open to one final unfinished entry. They are not prisoners. They are gatekeepers. I have opened the door, and they have walked through. Now they walk among us, and I can hear them in the walls, calling me to... The sentence ended there. The pen had been dragged across the page in a long black line. No trace of Vogler was ever found. When Allied forces reached the camp months later, the remaining prisoners were barely alive. Many were delirious. Some refused to sleep, even after treatment. They spoke of shadows standing in corners, of whispers beneath the floor, of the faceless man watching from beyond the fence. Several insisted the 30 missing prisoners had not died. They said they had gone somewhere else, and sometimes when the camp was quiet, they could still be heard whispering from underground. The bunker was photographed, searched, and sealed. Samples of the gray residue were collected, but the results were never made public. Within months, the case disappeared into classified military archives. Projekt Sleepwalker was never officially acknowledged. For decades, the story survived only as a rumor, a secret camp, a Nazi doctor obsessed with dreams, 30 prisoners who vanished from sealed tanks, and a phrase written again and again in the dark. Wir sind erwacht. We are awake. The most disturbing theory is that Vogler did not discover another world beneath consciousness. He discovered a prison, and the figures the prisoners saw were not visitors. They were inmates, ancient things sealed behind the waking mind, forgotten so completely that humanity mistook their prison for imagination. The 30 prisoners were chosen because death had already touched them. Each near-death experience left a fracture. Each fracture became a keyhole, and when Vogler placed all 30 together in the dark, he did not create a doorway. He unlocked one. That would explain the empty tanks, the gray residue, the writing on the walls, and Vogler's final words. They are not prisoners. They are gatekeepers. The records remain sealed. The bunker was supposedly destroyed. The witnesses are dead, but people still claim to dream of the faceless man. They wake with the smell of ozone in their rooms. They hear humming in the walls before sleep, and sometimes, in the dark behind their eyelids, they see the same words, not written, remembered. Wir sind erwacht. We are awake. Because maybe the horror of Projekt Sleepwalker is not that it happened. Maybe the horror is that it never ended.